These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on Market Journal. I'm Bryce Duskett. Welcome into the month of June. We've got a lot of ground to cover on this week's show, including an extension event update, some of the things happening soon. We'll also get a look at weather with Nebraska Extension Ag climatologist Eric Hunt, as well as look at some of the current market trends with DTN's Todd Hultman. Plus, get up close and personal with the grain cart technology of tomorrow today. We'll do so here coming up in a few moments, but first, let's head out and into the field to kick off this week's show with a planting update from Western Nebraska. Earlier this week, we caught up with Scottsbluff area producer Andy Groskopf to see how things were shaping up for his operation. Okay, Andy, thank you very much for the time. Let's start here. Tell me a little about your operation.
Thank you. We live 6 miles north of Scottsbluff. We grow corn and dry edible beans. Everything's irrigated. We do have a few acres of dry land corn that we grow as well, too.
Okay, so where are you at? Let's start on the corn side. You got all your corn on the ground at this point?
Yeah, we finished up about a week and a half ago. Pretty lucky to get it in when we did. Unlike the rest of the state, we are pretty dry, and so we could use some rain. I mean, I would say corn is probably 95% planted here in Scottsbluff County.
You say you guys are getting a little dry at this point. Thankfully, you do have a lot of irrigation you can rely on at this point. Is anybody running pivots, Andy, or people just kind of fingers crossed we'll get some moisture?
Yeah, pivots are going here right now. We're on the hay. It's what they call the hay run. I mean, we're on a federal ditch here, so our water comes out of the mountains of Wyoming, down North Platte River, and out in channeled out in through laterals. And right now, there's a lot of pivots running. Not much gravity irrigation going on now because the crops are too small to ditch, so we could really use rain because we're not all pivot irrigated here.
Mm-hmm. Dry edible beans. Talk to me about that crop and where you sit at the moment.
We grow Great Northern beans. Next week, we're going to start planting them. They're about a 90-day crop, and they're harvested about the middle of September, so we're going to start on that next week and get them in the ground. Some are going right now, getting planted, so it's a good time of the year to start on those.
Help me out. I'm not super familiar with dry edible beans. What's it like to plant them and harvest it? I guess compare that to soybeans for those in the eastern side of the state.
Totally different crop. A dry bean is, of course, they're not Roundup ready, or they don't have no traits to them like that. So we spray a pre-emerge when we till the soil for them, then we plant them, and then we spray them again. I mean, we need a herbicide badly for this crop to continue here. It's just getting tough to grow them because of like Palmer amaranth and weeds that are resistant to herbicides.
Yeah, definitely some key challenges there on that front for you guys. I guess as we're sitting here nearing the month of June, what else is on your mind and I guess your neighbor's mind too, for those in the panhandle of Nebraska?
Yeah, everybody here, we keep talking about how dry it is. And of course, the Farm Bill's been on a lot of people's minds, just getting everything in. And just the challenges of a new year is what's on everybody's mind.
Yeah. You're involved with the Nebraska Corn Board. Why did you choose to represent portions of Western Nebraska through that position?
I really enjoyed the Corn Board. I've learned a lot of things, got to see a lot of things, and it's really an honor just to step up and represent growers from my district, and I would highly recommend it to anyone to go out and get involved in organizations, whether it be the Corn Board, your local Farm Bureau, or any other commodity organization. Go out and get involved.
Finally, before I let you go, it's kind of that time of the year. We're getting into it. I've got a friend out in the Panhandle. We always talk about it each year. It seems like the big white combine likes to strike areas of the Panhandle more so than other areas of Nebraska. Has that been the case for you in years past?
Oh, in years past, we get hail once every 4 years, it seems like. We're pretty lucky. I have a friend that's north of nThere, and he gets hail out of every 5 years. So, I mean, it just kind of depends where you live. We're prone to get hail here. In fact, my crop insurance agent just called me yesterday and was wondering about hail insurance already. So hail is a problem. We haven't had any yet here.
Thanks to Andy for that in-the-field update this week. Certainly hope he can avoid the hail this year. Well, up next, you might recall during the Nebraska Ag Expo, we introduced you to some technology designed specifically for the grain cart. An automated grain cart could change the way that harvest is completed in the very near future. My colleague Chad Moyer with the Rural Radio Network was out on hand for a field demonstration of this product, and he brings us this story now. Chad?
Today we're visiting with Colton Rathman. He is a test engineer with JCA Technologies. Colton, a new piece of technology, a new tool in the toolbox for farmers, specifically helping with harvest. If you had to describe Outrun, how would you do that?
Outrun is an autonomous system that allows all infield applications of the grain cart to be done with nobody in the tractor, all controlled from the combine.
What is this designed to do? What should happen when you use Outrun?
It will allow the combine driver to have complete control of that grain cart, not have to go on the radio and tell anyone where to be. He can just put that cart wherever they want it.
Okay. Well, show us. Can you show us how it works? Give us kind of a walkthrough and explain what you're doing.
So as you can see here on the app, we've got the field boundary here at this dealership. So what we're going to do here is you can see the cart location, the combine location, and then this here is our truck zone. We'll get to that in a minute. So what you can do here is there are three main tasks: staging cart, ready to fill, and then send a truck. So for stage cart, we're going to select that task, and then we're going to drop a pin, and you can change the direction that you want it to end, what direction you want it facing. So we're going to drop it here in the field. I'm going to select staging, and then the tractors receive the task, and it's going to execute that task, and it's going to end up over there on that end of the field.
And so just you doing that right here in front of us, it didn't take very long for you to give the command and for the tractor to respond.
Correct. Once the task has been sent to the tractor, there is a 3-second delay for it to notify the surroundings. The alarm will go off and the hazards will start flashing, and then it will start executing the task.
Okay, so now you're extending the auger arm out.
Yes, so I've extended the auger. The grain tank's full. I know I need the grain cart to come for an unload, so I'll hit the ready to fill button here on the tablet. It's going to plan a path, and it's going to come a line underneath the auger here.
Let's say, okay, so again, thinking practically, you're more than likely taking out 12 or however many rows of grain, 16 rows or whatever it might be, and then you just go over and you touch that pad and say, hey, I'm full.
Yep.
And then here it comes.
And then it will line up underneath the auger. And then we will change on the app here to this alignment view. So now you have full control of where you're filling into the grain cart. So you can move that unload point so that you can most optimally fill that grain cart better than you can with an operator where you're giving hand signals back and forth or going over the radio saying move forward, speed up, slow down, whatever it might be. And with that, the grain cart also is paired to the combine. So if we speed up, the grain cart is going to speed up with us to keep that point, and as we slow down, it will slow down with us in order to keep that unload point so we don't have to worry about spilling grain. And if the combine were to come to a stop, say I got plugged, say something happens, I need to come to a stop, the grain cart will also come to a stop at that time, and it will basically cancel that task and wait for you to call it again.
How do you if I want to fill the front or if I want to fill the back?
So if you want to fill the front, you simply nudge the load point to the front, and then in this case, the tractor will slow down so that you can get to the front of that cart. And if you want to fill the back of the cart, you nudge and move that point to the back of the cart.
And you're doing all this on the go?
All of this on the go while I'm harvesting.
Okay, so let's talk about what happens when the grain cart is full. So you've topped it off. What happens now?
So now that the grain cart's full, so once the grain cart's full, we've got that truck zone set, so our trucks are parked down there. Truck drivers can unload it. So what we'll do is we'll hit the send to truck task, and it will go to that predefined zone where the trucks are parked. And once it navigates to that zone, it will drop into the manual mode so that the truck driver can approach, hop in the cab, and unload it into the semi.
So as we're sitting here, its mission is to go back to that pre-selected truck zone
Correct.
and wait to be unloaded.
Correct.
There
And
it
that
goes.
truck zone can be moved wherever you need it in the field as you go, but that's a predefined one-click task, similar to the staging task, but it's always the same point.
So you could argue that you're saving the employee wages of one person in the tractor cab, right?
What you're really doing is you're optimizing that labor that you would have. So in the case of the person you would normally have in the grain cart, you can have them doing anything else. You could have them in another truck. You can get more grain on the road. That's really where the optimization is getting somebody out of that cab and allowing you to just continue harvesting while all of your grain is on the road.
Yeah, no doubt. Colton, thanks for showing us, shining a spotlight on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, that's Colton Rathman. He is a test engineer with JCA Technologies. Again, showing us Outrun, a way, like he says, to optimize the people that are working on your farm and automate that grain cart activity. I'm Chad Moyer.
If you'd like to learn more about Outrun, you can follow the link attached with this story over on the Market Journal homepage. Up next, we check in on the grain markets, and joining the program this week from DTN is Todd Hultman. Todd, good to see you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Bryce. Always a pleasure.
Well, let's jump in. We'll start on the corn side of things. People keeping a close eye on the planting progress as USDA continues to come out with the weekly reports. And you noted progress is on schedule, but you do have some lingering concerns. What are those?
Yeah, well, this spring here in the Western Corn Belt and the Central Corn Belt, we've been hit with just about everything. We've seen heavy rains, severe storms, tornadoes, flooding in areas, damaging winds, hail. Just about everything you could want out of a spring. And in spite of all that, we're still keeping a very good planting pace for both corn and soybeans. I think it's a bit of a testament to the farmers to stay out there in the fields, sometimes in tough conditions, but also maybe to some better equipment than we had years ago. But whatever the case, the overall progress is keeping up. But, it's the remaining planting that I'm concerned about, and especially for corn. So we've got 17% of the crop left. Just how much of that is still fields that are too wet? Just how much time is it going to take? We've got another week of rain in front of us before we get to drier, warmer weather. And I think probably by the time we get to our planting report, we still may have some areas of prevented plantings. And if not prevented plantings, maybe it'll just be so late that instead of corn, they'll think of something else to plant, probably soybeans.
Obviously, that's a story worth paying attention to, but maybe on the flip side of that coin, perhaps a discussion not happening enough for the areas that have been dry the past couple of years, like those in eastern Nebraska, parts of Iowa. They're planting into some really good soil conditions this spring, aren't they?
Oh, fantastic. The profile of soil moisture across the Midwest, Bryce, is the best we've seen probably since 2020 for a lot of the areas. And it's, especially in the Western Corn Belt, we've had a very long dry spell. And last year, we saw a lot of that dry, hot weather, especially toward the end of the year. So it is nice to start out with some decent soil moisture profile this year. And I have to say, in spite of all the planting obstacles we've had this spring, I think that's keeping everybody thinking that we're still going to have some big crops this fall.
Let's switch over to the soybean side of things. Looking at your commentary you posted on DTN, you note in the soybean complex, at this point, you could see prices going either way. Why is that?
Yeah, well, there's an obvious bearish scenario here, and that's the possibility that some more acres may be added to soybeans by the time we get to the June 28 report from USDA. If the planting dates become too late, we could see some additional soybean acres. we're already seeing a shift up to 86.5 million estimated in the March report from USDA. If that goes to 87 or 88, we're talking about a 4.5 billion bushel crop or so, and that would probably add to our ending stocks in the fall. So that's kind of the orthodox bearish view at the moment. On the other hand, Bryce, we've seen a situation where Brazil had a big soybean harvest. They got hit a bit at the end of their soybean harvest period here by flooding in southern Brazil, but overall, they're still going to come in with a big crop, and they have come in with a big crop. But the amount and strength of demand coming out of China is really eradicating those soybean supplies or shrinking those soybean supplies very quickly. And we're seeing quite a rebound in Brazil's soybean price fairly early in the season. If that type of thing continues, you have to think that China could be a customer perhaps by late summer for the US. And in fact, last week there were some rumors of some US business going to China dated for the late summer, but we haven't seen any confirmation of that yet.
Okay, pay attention to that story as well. Again, looking at your commentary, noting in the wheat side of things, the current rally the most bullish of the year. What are the factors leading to the bullish sentiment?
Oh, we've had several things going on. They've been talking about low wheat stocks in India. There's talk about their tax on wheat imports could be taken away starting in June. If that is true, that opens the door to the possibility of a big customer for the world, probably Russian wheat for that. Earlier this year, we saw freeze damage across Northern Europe. We've seen extremely wet conditions that's hurting wheat production in Western Europe. But the biggest of them all, Bryce, and the crown jewel here is the Black Sea wheat region. They got hit with some freeze damage earlier this month, and now they've been sitting in dry conditions for several weeks now. We've got a hot forecast ahead. There are some chances for light rains this week, but overall, the conditions for Western Ukraine and Southern Russia are not looking so good right now, and some private estimates are already starting to come down. So it's gonna come down to weather and just how big of a hit that region takes. But the bigger the hit, the better it is for that world wheat price, because we've seen 2 years where wheat prices have just been really in the basement, dominated by the exports from Russia.
So based on all these factors you're talking about today for corn, soybeans, and wheat, Todd, we did see a bit of a slump here midweek as you and I are discussing things on Wednesday. But big picture, when we see a rally in these markets, is now a time to reward it for both old and new crop?
Well, of course, old crop, we're long gone as far as our advice on old crop. So if you have any left over, this rally was definitely worth taking advantage of to get out of that. And I'd say yes. For new crop, we started some light forward sales on soybeans earlier this week. And I'm holding off on corn just with the thought that there could be a surprise in the June 28 acreage estimate for corn.
Thanks again to Todd for joining the program this week. Coming up next week, we'll be joined with Darren Newsome. He's with Bar Chart. As always, we invite your questions here on the show. So if you have one you want me to ask Darren, go ahead and email us or get in touch on social media, and I'll be sure to pass your question along. Well, no farmer wants to let down the previous generation in their operation. As fourth or fifth generations of the family farm, the pressure to succeed adds personal anxiety and a lot of extra emotion in the farming operation. That is just one of the many things that farmers have on their mind. And according to Marshall Sewell, a Florida farmer who advises farmers on mental health, taking time to care for your mental health should be a top priority for all farmers. You can learn more from him in the latest issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It's now time to check in on weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Eric Hunt. Eric, understanding you have a bit of an extended outlook when it comes to weather.
Thanks, Bryce. Let's start by taking a look at where we are with El Nino, which is probably going to get a death certificate here in the next month or so. In terms of our sea surface temperature anomalies, you're about that El Nino threshold. We are headed down toward where we expect a La Nina to develop, and the CPC is expecting a La Nina to develop this summer and persist through the fall and into the coming winter. In terms of sea surface temperature anomalies right now, again, we are seeing some of that colder sea surface temperatures across the central and eastern equatorial Pacific, where we would normally expect it to be for during La Nina. Definitely some warmer sea surface temperatures here across the central Pacific. That has really kind of helped drive a ridge and some troughing into the western U.S., which has made for more of our stormy pattern that we've had here in the last part of the spring. These sea surface temperature anomalies are expected to persist through the month of June and probably strengthen in terms of their cold anomalies across the central Pacific. The June outlook for temperature is relatively warm across the western U.S., equal chances for below or above average across the eastern U.S. The European model is showing a bit more warm signals, particularly here across a lot of the high plains of Rockies region. In terms of precipitation in the month of June, the CPC is relatively bullish on the pattern staying relatively active and getting some precipitation across a lot of the Corn Belt and the Central Great Plains. So again, if this verifies, we are going to be relatively wet in June. But in terms of a different signal, the European model is showing a drier signal across a lot of the Central Plains and the Western Corn Belt. Now, again, I kind of hope in some level this comes true because we could use some drier weather in some places, but I'm not entirely buying this one coming to fruition. However, there is some past precedent, though. June of 2020, 2016, we were coming from El Nino going into La Nina. We did see some drier conditions across a lot of this region where the European model is showing us being a little bit dry. But again, the European model and other models have been trying to show us being dry in that 3 or 4 week time frame for a while now. That just hasn't necessarily been materializing at this point, but maybe at some point it will. In terms of temperatures, though, I'm more confident about it being relatively warm in June. Past precedent would suggest us being fairly warm in June as well. As we head into the month of July, though, I think we may have to watch out for ridging developing across the southwestern United States. And if that happens, that would actually put us in a relatively favorable region for getting at least periodic chances of storms. So we may actually see a pattern like we had late June and July, like last summer. We just had periodic chances of some heavier storms rolling through, which is not necessarily good. Was good for the rain, but not necessarily good news for hail damage and wind damage for crops. Again, the European model is not showing any real dry signal, and they are showing a little bit wetter in Iowa and Illinois. So again, they are maybe picking up on this being a little bit more of an active area this summer in terms of precipitation. A little drier signal here across western Nebraska. At least as a whole, CPC is expecting it to be relatively warm nationwide. NME is definitely showing some warmer signal across the Rockies and in the southwest, and this is also being verified by the European model, is showing pretty much the entire nation being relatively warm this summer. CPC is keeping the better chances of precipitation across the eastern U.S. as we move through the entire summer, with it being a bit drier than average, particularly as we go further west of the state into the western United States. Then NME is showing precipitation being mostly below average across some of the same regions as the CPC is. And in terms of the European model, they are actually showing a wetter corridor here across a lot of the central United States, with it being a bit drier than average across a lot of the western United States. And in terms of seasonal drought outlook, the CPC is showing some improvement here across Nebraska and degradation across the southern plains. Thanks, and back to you, Bryce.
Alrighty, thank you very much for that update, Eric. Well, there's a few extension events coming up in the next couple of weeks that you won't want to miss. Up first will be the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's 2024 Wheat Variety Tours beginning on June 6th and running through the 14th. These tours are hosted by farmer cooperators and the university's farm managers each year. Tours will occur at 8 fields across the state from Jefferson to Banner County. The tours will be led by university and extension educators at various stops. Seed industry partners will also be on hand to share some of their insights on their varieties and answer participant questions. 78 different varieties are being tested across the state, and wheat team members will be available to answer your questions on variety selection, production, and pest or disease concerns. The tours will kick off next week on Thursday, June 6th at Noble Seed in Jefferson County at 5 p.m. Tuesday, June 11th, tours will be held at the Jim Wyatt Farm in Banner County at 9 a.m., followed by V&F Seed in Dual County at 5 p.m. Wednesday, June 12th at the Stump International Wheat Research Center in Perkins County at 10 a.m. Then Thursday, June 13th at the High Plains Agricultural Lab in Cheyenne County beginning at 8 a.m., followed by Colon Seed Farm in Box Butte County at 1:30 in the afternoon. And finally, the tours will wrap up on Friday, June 14th, with those tours beginning at 11 a.m. Central Time at 10 Bentil Farms in Furnace County and ending at Peters Seed Farm at 5 p.m. in Red Willow County. All are welcome to attend, and there is no cost to do so. For more information on these events, you can find that along with this story over on the Market Journal website. Also coming up on June 26th, Nebraska Extension will be hosting their annual Weed Management Field Day at the South Central Ag Lab near Clay Center. The day's events will include on-site demonstration of new technology and herbicides for weed control in soybeans, sorghum, and corn.
Weeds evolving resistant is not new, right? But now we have weeds which are resistant to multiple herbicides. So that is kind of more challenging because a single weed species. For example, palmer amaranth in Nebraska, we have confirmed resistant to atrazine and HPPD inhibiting herbicides that we have been using in corn production. So now the message is about how best we can utilize chemical and integrate non-chemical weed management options such as cover crops. So how best we can integrate those chemical and non-chemical weed management options will be the key message, particularly for controlling multiple herbicide-resistant weeds that we do have. And we have a number of projects to demonstrate, particularly for weed management in corn, soybean, and sorghum. Especially, I invite growers to see the results of some of the cover crop research that we have been conducting for the last few years at South Central Ag Lab. That includes termination timing for cereal rye, cover crop, how best you can utilize planting green concept and terminate them after planting corn and soybean. And we also have projects about interseeding small grains that includes wheat, oat, and barley in soybean, and how best we can take advantage of interseeding cover crops for weed suppression, early season weed suppression in soybean. And we also have some projects on how best we can control volunteer corn in corn and also in sorghum. Anybody can attend. This is pretty wide open, and as I told you, we provide unbiased opinion about update on dicamba use in dicamba resistant soybean. We also provide all the information about managing herbicide resistant weeds in Nebraska agronomic crops. That is the #1 challenge for growers. So we have a number of projects how best we can control those.
The Weed Management Field Day will be coming up here in the next couple of weeks on Wednesday, June 26th, beginning at 9 a.m. and running through 1 p.m. at the South Central Ag Lab near Clay Center. The event is free to attend. However, they are asking you to register. If you'd like to register online, that information is at the bottom of your screen now. Well, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Market Journal. We certainly appreciate having you with us today. Now, coming up next week, we'll be seeing how the university is helping with continued education for ag educators all across the state. We'll also get up close and personal with a weeding practice geared toward organic producers called Weed Flaming. You won't want to miss that story. Hope to see you back here for it next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.